Thomas's fatal mistake. A turning point in the bold and the beautiful. The drama inside the Forrester dynasty has never been more volatile, and this time, the consequences are irreversible. As Taylor and Ridge edge closer to a long-awaited reconciliation and possible remarriage, Thomas Forrester steps out from behind the shadows and into the center of the storm, determined to protect his mother's happiness at any cost. What begins as a protective impulse spirals into a tragic chain of events that threatens to destroy everything. With Steffi stepping back from interfering in Ridge's complicated love triangle, Thomas assumes the role of protector. He sees Ridge drifting back toward Brooke, and that possibility is unacceptable. Thomas believes with total conviction that Brooke Logan is a threat not just to Taylor, but to the entire Forrester family. In his eyes, she manipulates, deceives, and always finds a way to twist Ridge's heart in her favor. For Thomas, this time, it ends. He won't stand by while Brooke destroys another chapter in his parents' turbulent history. Fueled by frustration and desperation, Thomas seeks out Brooke at her home. The confrontation isn't accidental, it's calculated. He intends to issue a warning and make it crystal clear that her days of playing the victim and stealing Ridge's heart are over. When Thomas arrives, his tone is firm, cold, and unwavering. He tells Brooke flat out to stay away from his father, that her manipulations will not be tolerated anymore. Brooke, never one to back down, meets his fire with fire. She refuses to be intimidated and throws his accusations back in his face. The verbal exchange quickly escalates into a verbal war, with years of resentment, betrayal, and family pain fueling every word. Brooke calls Thomas unstable. Thomas accuses Brooke of destroying every man she touches. The tension explodes into violence when, in a moment of unfiltered rage, Thomas raises his hand and slaps Brooke across the face. The sound echoes like a gunshot through the room. Brooke stumbles backward, crashing to the floor. A thin line of blood appears where his hand made contact. The shock is immediate, raw, and chilling. Thomas stands frozen, staring at her in disbelief, as if he himself cannot fully process what he's done. Brooke, trembling, clutching her face, scrambles to her feet, terrified. In her panic, she runs from the house. Outside, she's crying, shaking, unable to think clearly. Her breaths are short and rapid. She crosses the street without looking, dazed and desperate to get away from the horror of what just happened. And then it happens, a car comes speeding down the road. The screech of tires. A gut-wrenching thud. The impact is brutal. Brooke's body hits the ground hard, lifeless. By the time Thomas races outside, it's too late. The car is gone. Brooke lies crumpled on the pavement, blood pooling beneath her. He kneels beside her, checks her pulse, shakes her shoulders. Nothing. Her eyes are vacant. Her body limp. She's gone. The full gravity of what's happened crashes over Thomas in a wave of dread and disbelief. This wasn't what he intended. It wasn't supposed to go this far. But the reality is undeniable. Brooke is dead, and he was the last person to see her alive. Panic sets in. Sirens in the distance grow louder. His first instinct is to help, to stay and explain. But then fear takes control. The consequence would if the slap is discovered. What if someone saw him leave the house? What if Ridge finds out? The Forrester name would be dragged through the mud. His mother's chance at happiness, destroyed. And worst of all, he might go to prison. The fallout would be catastrophic. In a split-second decision, Thomas does the unthinkable. He looks around, sees no witnesses, and flees the scene. He tells himself it's not his fault. Brooke ran. The car hit her. He didn't mean for any of it to happen. But as he disappears into the shadows, leaving behind Brooke's lifeless body and the shattered remnants of his conscience, one thing is clear: there's no turning back. Back at the Forrester estate, the atmosphere is still tense. Taylor senses that something is wrong with Thomas, but he deflects, brushing off her concerns with vague excuses. News of Brooke's accident spreads like wildfire. Ridge is devastated. Hope is inconsolable. The Logan family reels from the sudden, shocking death. No one suspects the truth yet. Thomas tries to carry on, but the guilt festers. He can't sleep. He avoids mirrors. Every time he looks at Ridge, he sees the heartbreak his actions have caused. Every time he sees hope, he remembers the look of fear in Brooke's eyes. The slap echoes in his head like a curse. He starts spiraling, becoming more paranoid, more erratic. Meanwhile, investigators dig deeper into the accident. Surveillance footage from nearby homes is being reviewed. The timeline isn't adding up. Witnesses mention seeing Brooke running, looking terrified. Some say she was screaming. A neighbor swears they heard shouting before the crash. The puzzle pieces begin to align, and the center of the picture is Thomas Forrester. As the pressure mounts, Thomas becomes increasingly volatile. He lashes out at coworkers, isolates himself from his family, and begins to unravel. Steffi grows suspicious. She's seen Thomas like this before when secrets are eating him alive. She confronts him, but he deflects again. He insists that he's fine, that Brooke's death was a tragedy but nothing more. But secrets have a way of surfacing. One of the Forrester security staff comes forward with troubling information. A motion-detected security camera caught Thomas entering and leaving Brooke's property shortly before the accident. The footage is grainy, but the timeline is damning. Ridge demands answers. When confronted, Thomas Lee says he went to talk, but Brooke was fine when he left. He claims he never even entered the house. Ridge wants to believe him, but doubts begin to creep in. Hope, however, doesn't buy it. Her mother was terrified of Thomas for a reason. She starts pushing harder, digging deeper, determined to find out what really happened that night. Eventually, the truth begins to leak. Forensics find a fingerprint on the broken lamp near where Brooke felt the misses. Medical reports show signs of a recent facial injury consistent with a slap. The circumstantial evidence becomes too heavy to ignore. Ridge is devastated. When he confronts Thomas with the evidence, Thomas breaks. He confesses not just the slap, but everything. The confrontation, the rage, the moment he lost control, Brooke's flight, the accident, and his decision to flee. He falls to his knees, sobbing, begging his father for forgiveness. But forgiveness doesn't come easily. Ridge is shattered. The woman he once loved, the mother of his daughter, is dead because of his own son's actions. He doesn't know how to process the grief, the betrayal, or the horror of it all. Taylor is equally crushed. Her dream of rebuilding their family has turned into a nightmare. The Forresters go into damage control. Legal teams are activated. The media swarms the estate. The Logan family demands justice. Hope is inconsolable, and her grief turns to fury. She wants Thomas behind bars. She wants him to pay. But even as the legal system gears up, deeper questions remain. Was it murder? Was it an accident? Did Thomas mean to hurt Brooke? Or was he just another victim of the chaos that's always surrounded the Forrester-Logan feud? In the fallout, alliances shift. Ridge is caught between loyalty to his son and his guilt over what happened to Brooke. Taylor tries to hold the family together, but she's lost all faith in Thomas. Steffi, once his fiercest protector, now looks at him with pity and fear. And Thomas. He's alone, consumed by guilt, haunted by the woman whose death he caused. The golden boy, the designer with a tortured soul, has crossed a line he can never uncross. This isn't just another Forrester scandal. This is a tragedy with no winners. Brooke Logan is dead. Thomas Forrester's life is in ruins. And the world of the bold and the beautiful will never be the same again. Ridge Forrester was never a man who crumbled easily. But the death of Brooke shattered him in ways he didn't think possible. Grief swallowed him whole. The woman who had been the center of his life for decades, love, betrayal, divorce, and reunion was gone. Not gone in the way they sometimes were during their many breakups, but truly gone. Forever. No more phone calls. No more arguments. No more second chances. And now, Ridge couldn't even say goodbye. He sat alone in Brooke's empty house for hours, sometimes days. Her perfume still lingered in the air. Her favorite scarf lay folded on the back of a chair. Everywhere he turned, she was there and yet not. The silence in the house was unbearable. He found himself replaying every last moment he had with her, questioning every choice, every delay. If he had come to her that night instead of hesitating with Taylor, if he had just picked up the phone, maybe she'd still be alive. Meanwhile, the investigation intensified. The police had questioned Sand not just about the accident itself, but about what led up to it. Brooke's facial injury, her panicked escape, the mysterious presence of Thomas Forrester at the house. Surveillance footage confirmed his visit. Forensics found his fingerprints. There was no more room for doubt. But Ridge was torn. He'd heard Thomas' confession, the slap, the argument, the fear. But Thomas insisted again and again that he didn't kill her, that he never meant for anything to happen, that he just wanted to protect Taylor. Ridge wanted to believe it was an accident, that Brooke's death was a tragic mistake. But the truth kept gnawing at him. Thomas hit her. She ran. She died. Hope Logan, however, didn't see it as a mistake. She was convinced that Thomas was dangerous, that he'd crossed a line that couldn't be excused by grief or guilt. To her, Brooke's death wasn't just a random tragedy, it was the result of years of obsession, manipulation, and unchecked violence. She made it clear to the authorities. She wanted justice, and she wanted Thomas held responsible. The pressure mounted. Detectives visited Forrester Creations. They interviewed Thomas again. His story was vague. He claimed Brooke tripped, that she panicked for no reason. But every version of the story contradicted the evidence. When the autopsy report came back, it revealed the bruising on Brooke's face was consistent with a direct strychnine powerful enough to knock her to the ground. A warrant was issued. Thomas was taken into custody for questioning, this time as a suspect. Ridge was forced to watch his son walk into the back of a squad car, handcuffed. The flash of camera lights, the screaming reporters. The shame was unbearable. Thomas' eyes met his father's for just a moment before he disappeared behind the police doors. Ridge didn't know if he saw guilt or fear or both. The Forresters were in chaos. Taylor, devastated, tried to defend her son, but even she struggled to justify what had happened. Steffi, heartbroken, couldn't look at her brother the same way anymore. Her belief in him had cracked. His obsession with protecting their family had gone to Ferran now. Someone was dead. Ridge found himself stuck between impossible choices. He loved his son, but he also loved Brooke, had loved her more than any woman in his life. And now, because of Thomas, she was gone. One night, he returned to the scene of the accident. He stood on the dark road where Brooke's life ended. The street light flickered above him. The sound of distant cars echoed. He knelt down, touching the spot where she had fallen, where her blood had stained the pavement. He whispered apologies into the night for not protecting her, for not choosing her sooner, for letting things go too far. The next day, Ridge did something no one expected. He went to the police. He asked to speak to the lead investigator. He handed over the security footage from the Forrester estate. And then, with a voice that trembled, he told them everything he knew. Arriving Thomas told him in confidence. It was betrayal. It was heartbreaking. But Ridge knew there was no other way. Brooke deserved truth. She deserved justice, even if it meant destroying his own son. Thomas was officially charged with involuntary manslaughter and obstruction of justice for fleeing the scene and lying to authorities. The media exploded. The Forresters became the center of a national scandal. Forrester Creations faced boycotts. Investors pulled out. Rumors swirled. Hope threatened to leave the company entirely. Donna and Katie severed all ties with the Forresters. Eric fell into a deep silence, ashamed of what the family had become. Taylor collapsed emotionally, blaming herself for not seeing the signs in Thomas. Steffi tried to hold what remained of the family together, but the weight was too much. Every dinner was quiet. Every hallway echoed with tension. The once proud Forrester name was now synonymous with tragedy. As the trial approached, Rich stayed isolated. He didn't visit Thomas in jail. He didn't return Taylor's calls. He stayed at Brooke's house, haunted by memories. He read her old journals. He looked through their wedding photos. He held onto her scarf and slept on her side of the bed. No one could reach him. At the arraignment, Thomas pleaded not guilty. His lawyer claimed that the slap didn't kill Brooke, that her death was caused by her own recklessness running into the street without looking. They argued that grief had distorted perception, that Thomas was guilty of nothing more than a bad decision made in a heated moment. But the prosecution painted a different picture. A man with a history of manipulation and control, who became violent when challenged. A man who lost control. A man who, in his own words, would never let Brooke destroy Taylor's happiness again. That one line from a message recovered on his phone became a key piece of evidence. As the courtroom battles began, Rich sat silently in the back, every word a dagger to the heart. He watched Hope cry as photos of Brooke's final moments were shown. He saw Thomas, pale and tired, barely able to meet anyone's gaze. And he realized that no matter what verdict came, no one would win. Brooke was gone. Thomas was broken. The family was shattered. And Rich was left alone, carrying the unbearable weight of having lost the love of his life and watching his own son fall apart in the aftermath. The world of the bold and the beautiful would never be whole again.